evening, everyone. I would like to call the meeting to order and welcome everyone to the Tuesday, October 17th, 2023 Plain Edge Board of Education meeting. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to introduce Dr. Salina with the superintendent's comments.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, students and families that are here with us tonight. I'd like to thank everyone for being here, joining us at the Board of Education's meeting. I am going to turn it over to, and I believe, and I wanted to say, and Principal Ayoko is here as well. So at this point in time, I think we're going to go straight into the music, but I'm going to ask the board if we could flip and we're going to become audience members, if that's okay, so we can watch the students perform, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Cole and her in front of the students.
Tonight we'll be performing Rondo by Moret. Please enjoy. Introduce 3 students who were accepted as alternates for the All-State Festival, which is held in Rochester, New York, 11:30 to 12:03, and if accepted, they'll find out by November 1st. They scored extremely high at the NYSSMA Festival this past May in Merrick, and all 3 of them actually received perfect scores. And the judges ranked them throughout New York State. So they're on the alternate list, but as you can see, their level is incredibly high. Gabriella, please stand, Manfrey. Charlotte Rosenberg. And Ava Paloma. college level material that they performed for these judges, and it is so much time, so much effort put in. They work with an accompanist, perform in front of a judge. I always say it's like a interview for a job, because they're so nervous and they have to perform, and they did such an amazing job. I am just incredibly proud of you, and again, please one more round of applause. Emily Brennan and Elizabeth Neophytos were accepted as into the All-State Festival. So Emily Brennan is accepted on B-flat clarinet, and Elizabeth is on bass clarinet, and they will be traveling to All-State. So those students and these students will be announced again on November 15th, and a picture will be taken. Tonight is News Day, which is why they can't be there, so we want to all come together and celebrate them. So congratulations to all the All-State students.
First of all, students, I want to thank you all for coming and sharing your incredible music with us. I'm constantly amazed. It's not one of my areas of expertise, but I do have the pleasure of seeing the program start in the elementary schools, move through the middle school, and ultimately all of you come to the high school and you make such beautiful music. So I'd like to thank you, your colleagues, and all the other administrators that support the program, and I want to thank you all for coming here tonight. So thank you for joining us. We're going to take a 5-minute break, everyone. Thank you. Congratulations. See you all next month. You're available. Thank you, everyone. I'd like to thank Mr. Tolo and all students for their performance. I'd like to also have a couple of other announcements I'd like to share. Congratulations to Coach Robert Shaver on being inducted into the Nassau County Hall of Fame Athletics. Actually, I should have mentioned this while they were here. The high school Tri-M Honor Society created a fundraiser, partnering with Long Island Athletics in an effort to raise money for those affected by the Farmingdale band tragedy. I know that they raised many hundreds of dollars and donated that to the Farmingdale public schools, and actually to the child of the band director who unfortunately passed away in that horrible accident. Challenger game schedule has been announced. The next home game for our student athletes is October 18th, 4:15. That's tomorrow. Yes, it is. Come and cheer on our athletes. Our adult education session began yesterday. We run through November 30th. As usual, we sell out in pickleball. Pickleball seems to be the hottest thing going in the world at this point in time. We can't get enough pickleball instructors.
If anyone knows
Yep.
instructors.
We will be hosting Special Olympics Spring Games on May 4th. Stay tuned for more information regarding volunteer opportunities. An event of this magnitude takes anywhere between 400 and 600 volunteers. It is a huge undertaking. We're going to be reaching out to all of our community groups, obviously all our PTAs. We're going to look to create a window of time for people to come. I know people, it's very busy on the weekends, especially during this time of the year. So we're going to be looking to funnel that energy in, and we're looking and coming up with a way to merge together. Plain Edge Pride Day is usually the week following that, but we're going to merge all those events together, so we'll be talking with the community about that as well. Plain Edge High School ceramic and sculpture students, if you have a chance, check out our social media. Check out our Twitter, our Facebook accounts. Pottery on Wheels were here. They were molding clay, and it turned out it was a gorgeous day. It was done outside. We set up tables outside. Our teachers were there. Amazing job at the high school. Congratulations to the art staff for this elective course. Congratulations to Mike Iamma, a member of the high school soccer varsity team for the past 4 years. Michael plays club soccer at a very high level. He is a member of the U.S. Olympic development team, and for the past 6 years. I know his parents, and I can't tell you how proud I am of Michael. He's set to graduate the program this year. He's earned a selection to the be a player on ODP, and is going to be traveling over to Europe to play 2 games over there. We're actually going to have him, we're going to invite him and his family to come here next month so we can recognize Michael publicly. There's a number of students that we couldn't recognize tonight because they're at the band festival, which is over at, it's at Hofstra. Next year we have to do a better job with our schedule so that we don't have a conflict on this night, so that we can get over there to see them. I don't know how that happened, but there was an omission on my behalf, so I apologize. But I look forward to seeing you for next year. And that concludes the superintendent's remarks at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Selena. All right, moving on to routine approvals, approval of the minutes of the September 19, 2023 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the September 19, 2023 meeting? Dr. Neto, second, Ms. Maggio, all in favor?
Mr. Beirudi, Dr. Neto, Dr. Navy, Mr. Harris, Mrs. Maggio.
Opposed?
No one opposed.
Abstaining?
Mrs. Townsend. So 5 in favor, none opposed, 1 abstaining.
Thank you.
Warrant reports, do I have a motion to approve warrant reports 20, 22 to 23, 25, 27, and 29? Mr. Paris, second. Dr. Neto? All in favor?
Mr. Beirudi, Mrs. Townsend, Dr. Neto, Dr. Navy, Mr. Harris, and Mrs. Maggio.
Opposed?
None opposed,
Abstaining?
none abstaining. 6 in favor, none opposed, none abstaining.
Thank you.
Treasurer's report, August 2023. Do I have a motion to approve the August 2023 Treasurer's report? Mrs. Townsend, second. Dr. Neto, all in favor?
Mr. Beirudi, Mrs. Townsend, Dr. Neto, Dr. Navy, Mr. Harris, and Mrs. Maggio.
Opposed?
None opposed,
Abstaining?
none abstaining. So 6 in favor, none opposed, none abstaining.
Now we'll be moving on to discussions and presentations.
Yes. Thank you.
Dr. Selena?
Yes. The topic tonight for discussion and consideration of the Board of Education is, as you may be aware, there was a recent change to the New York State real property tax law as it relates to volunteer firefighters and ambulance worker tax exemptions. We currently offer, which is called RPTL number 466C. It's currently in effect. 5 years of service is required by those people that are firefighters and ambulance workers. And the amount of tax exemption is 10%. Number of participants today is 62. There is a new law that was signed in which will supersede RPTL 466C, and it is going to, its title is, and it's been signed into law already, was RPTL number 466A. We have to migrate to it no later than December 25th. There are others that have migrated already. I bring it before you for us to talk about a little bit tonight. We did receive from Bethpage Fire District, we did receive a letter requesting that the board consider moving to this sooner than later, and that was from Commissioner Pat Stramandioli. So it is before you tonight. We did the research. We consulted with our attorneys at Ingham & Smith. We also consulted with the tax assessor's office to find out where this sits at this point in time. And I have some recommendations for the board for what's been signed into law, and the board can consider it tonight, and then we can talk about it further. So you have to migrate to it no later than December 25th, can be as soon as today. The range of years of service required. So I had a chance to speak to a representative from the fire department, and the issue really is that they can't attract enough people to be in the fire department to serve. You know, and I thought about it for a moment, and I volunteer for a lot of things, but I did not ever choose to run into a fire or to learn to be an EMT, et cetera. It just wasn't something that was of interest to me, but I have nothing but the utmost respect, obviously, for all those people that serve us on a volunteer basis here in both. We have 2 fire departments that cover us. We have the North Massapequa Fire Department. We also have the Bethpage Fire Department. Depending on where you live, your house is covered by one of those 2. So they are looking to reduce that to 2 years. The range is 2 to 5. We currently have 5 years of service. They're hoping that if we consider the 2 years, that we'd be able to get more people. So there's a couple things that you need to know about that. They have to be a homeowner in order to receive the benefit of this. So they would have to be the person that is on the fire department. They need to be an active member, and they would need to serve 2 years and be the homeowner to be eligible for this reduction. And as I said before, we currently offer that reduction, but it's with 5 years. You have to have 5 years of active service, and then you become eligible for it. And then they fill out on a regular basis. The fire department sends it to the tax assessor's office to verify those people that serve, and that happens as we speak today. This one here will reduce it to 2 is my recommendation. The tax exemption amount is currently 10%. I would suggest you keep it at 10%, not to change it. Number of participants, as I asked, there's no real known number to this, but I don't think that there's gonna be a large migration of people looking to join the fire department. I don't think it's gonna change things. People that volunteer for the fire department or people that wanted to volunteer for the fire department, I believe for people that are moving, we have a lot of mobility inside of and out of our community at this point, as far as home sales. I believe that there will be people that were looking to be volunteer firefighters. They would have the benefit in 2 years to be able to serve and to help support the fire department in its community here. So my recommendation is that, you know, we keep it at the 2 years, 10%. The other option is that any enrolled member who served more than 20 years shall be granted the exemption for the remainder of his or her life. So after serving for 20 years on the fire department, they would be granted the exemption for the rest of his or her life. So I'm recommending that you consider that. After 20 years of service, I believe that it is definitely something that's warranted. This one here is also, for me, I think is something that, in order to support, unremarried spouses of volunteer firefighters or ambulance workers killed in the line of duty will continue to receive the exemption provided the deceased was an active member for a minimum of 5 years. So, if their spouse, male or female, is deceased or killed in the line of duty after 5 years of service, the unremarried spouse would continue to be able to receive the benefit that that person would have received if they were alive. I think out of respect for those people that have served, that this would be something that the board should heavily consider. In addition to that, unremarried spouses of volunteer firefighters or ambulance workers who have passed away and were members for 20 years will continue to receive it for the exemption that they were receiving prior to their death. So it says here is that we could be, I mean, a perfect scenario would be, there'd be 2 people that were married. One of the people that served on the department as an active member for more than 20 years, that their partner would still be able to continue to receive it for the remainder of their life, which he would have been, or she would have been eligible for, should that person have been alive. So this would be in support of the family for the passing of the partners. So at this point in time, I open it up for discussion for the Board of Education. And, you know, obviously it's up to the board to have this discussion at this point in time. So I put it on the table for discussion. I turn it back to the Board President.
I did receive a letter from Bethpage Fire Department August 18th, and we were sort of finding out a lot more information that we needed so that we could make, you know, rational decisions regarding it. And, you know, from what I'm learning and what Dr. Selena has just presented, I believe that we could probably vote on this tonight. That if anyone else has any other information that they would like to share with us, they might know about because they are, you know, volunteering with the fire department, or they have information, just to allow people to have a clearer picture on this. We can vote tonight, or we can, you know, hold off until we have some more information.
So a couple of things, I'm a volunteer in Plainview, so this would be active for only people who live in a tax district. Must be an active firefighter. Anybody who's been in the volunteer fire service knows there are different levels of firefighting in the fire department. This is for active firefighters. If you move or leave, you are removed from the rolls. They do the rolls every year, so that house doesn't automatically qualify for the tax exemption. The theory in this is hopefully that people who move into the district and are new, are looking for something, this would be an incentive to join the fire department. A lot of firemen move from other districts, and sometimes they give it up. They say, I've had enough, but this might help them want to stay in the firefighting business as a volunteer. So that's really what the volunteer fire departments are looking for as an incentive. A good thing, bad thing, a lot of the younger firemen don't own homes in Plainview. They live with their families, so they would not qualify for this. But it's something that they're just trying to push out.
And you do have to be the homeowner to qualify
Correct.
for
Yes.
the exemptions.
I mean, I think one of the important things, if I'm not mistaken, of the volunteer fire departments is that they help support our students in case they get injured. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yeah, I will tell you, and this, nothing negative to say, but I was at a game this weekend, and unfortunately one of our students was hurt. And they did not have an ambulance there. the fire department treats us really true royalty. You know, in the 13 years that I've been here, they send, whenever available, obviously not out on call, they send an ambulance that's here. That student had to wait about half hour, 40 minutes to receive medical attention, just to have someone show up. They, you know, it was a horrible rainy day, but our people are here all the time. And when we call them for walkthroughs or to participate in our committees, Mark Frisella and Mr. Licata, there's a number of chiefs that are on both of these. And they're all residents, and they really go up and above to help us. And they, you know, we've been also requested to look at possibilities of having EMT programs based in the high school, which we're still looking at. And they just agreed with Principal Iocco to, on alternating months, we're going to be setting up a table so they can recruit students that are age eligible in order to join the fire department, because the truth of the matter is, we don't have enough volunteers. We need more volunteers that want to help protect our community. So I think that answers, speaks to what you're speaking about, Mr. Bailey.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I just want to clarify, so when you say ownership, so they have to actually prove that they're on the title of the deed, right?
Yes, so it ends up, the process, Peter did the research, so I'll chime in when I'm wrong. The assessor's office informs us that on an annual basis, a designee at each one of the fire departments delivers a list and sends a list in to active members of the fire department, so that there's a verification process that they do. And they also need to prove that so they do, the tax assessor's office takes a look at their first name and the last name, their address, and does a verification based upon plot, and determines whether they're eligible or not, and whether it will appear on their tax bill or not. And it happens every year, because I wasn't sure. I said, "Well, John, are you on all the time?" I wasn't sure, but the tax assessor's office in Essex County has been very helpful with this.
So they reassess every year, is that what you're saying?
You have to
They do a
apply.
verification, you have to apply every year. Every person has to apply every year. That is the process. So it's not a one and done kind of deal, so that, you know, you're on for a year or 2 or 5 years. Right now, you had to be on for 5 years. This would be suggesting changing that length of initial service.
All right, any other questions or comments from the board?
I'd like to make a motion that the board adopts RPTL number 466A as recommended on the sheet on the right-hand side for vote tonight.
I second. All in favor?
There will be an addendum. I will add the addendum as item number 35 to the agenda. I will read the addendum, which addresses what we've spoken about here tonight. And at that point in time, the board will have an opportunity to vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will also be sending a letter on behalf of the school district and the board, which will be a collaborative letter, which will let both of the chiefs, all of the chiefs know, both the Bethpage and the Massapequa Fire Department, that this has been approved and that it will go into effect in the 2024 year.
Thank you. Moving on to the commencement level assessments, presentation, Dr. DiPaolo and Catherine Honeyman will present right now. Commencement level assessment.
Along with Mrs. Klutzkin and Ms. Carcel.
Yes.
It's right by Lisa. I'll put it right in front of you.
In the obvious spot.
Next time I'll hold it.
I do have my contacts in my phone. Good evening. Tonight we are here to present, as Dr. Nadine said, the commencement level assessment annual presentation. We're going to start off by talking about some of our AP classes, and then we'll roll into our regions data for the previous school year.
Okay, so on this first slide here, you can see how many advanced placement courses our students are taking in our high school. And you can see all of the different courses that we're taking. So we're offering a lot of different opportunities for students to excel. And the 461 students actually represents over 50% of our high school students. Here you can also see, and we talk about this a lot, the opportunity for students to get college credit while still in high school. So here you actually have over 750 college credits cumulatively in all of these courses. So our kids are saving probably close to $700,000 in college tuition at $300 a credit. So you can see all the different courses that they have the opportunity to get a leg up to start their college careers. And as you're aware, the New York State currently requires Regents examinations in order to get a high school diploma. We're going to talk a little bit about those requirements and our numbers. Here you can see how many students took Regents this past year that just ended. We had the ELA in January, all the rest were June Regents, over 10 Regents, and we had 1,861 Regents tests taken by our students this past year. Here you can see the high school diploma requirements. On the left-hand side, you can see that every student is required to have 1 English, 1 math, 1 science, 1 social studies Regents, and 1 pathway. That pathway takes into account students with IEPs that might need to use CDOS or CTE or one of the other pathways to get credit for graduation. And then on the right-hand side, the advanced Regents diploma, the only difference here is that you need 2 extra math, 1 science, and all the rest is the same. So the first Regents we're going to look at is the English Common Core. As I said, that took place in January. You can see here that our passing rate dipped slightly from 98 to 93%. And our mastery rate did drop about 16 percentage points. But as you'll see on the next slide, it actually is in line with the county. So we're looking into that. We're of course going to work on improving that. But we are well above the passing rate in the county at the 93%, as you see there at 83%.
That brings us to our math Regents. We're going to start with our Algebra 1 Common Core Regents. This slide includes both our middle school and high school students and how they performed year to year. You'll notice we had an increase of 2% in passing rate and an increase of 16% in our mastery rate. This next slide zones in just on our middle school students, so that's our 8th graders taking our Common Core Algebra 1. Here you see that we increased to 99%, which means that all of our students but one passed the Algebra 1 Common Core Regents this year in 8th grade, so we're very excited and proud of them. Our mastery rate increased by 17% with our middle school students. This now brings us to our comparison between Plain Edge and Nassau County. I want to remind you that Nassau County's students include high school students. So when we compare everybody in Plain Edge to Nassau County, we had a 14% increase. But I want to remind you back on the other slide, it's actually a 16% increase that our middle school students, outperformed Nassau County. And then again, looking at Plain Edge Nassau County, our mastery rate is 6% higher for everybody. But if we back up to the previous slide, once again, we have the 45% mastery rate with our middle schoolers, which is 12% higher than Nassau County. That brings us to our next Regents, Geometry Common Core. Here we saw a huge increase of 20% from year to year in our passing rate and an increase of 4% in our mastery rate. When we compare ourselves to the county, we outperform the county by 16% in our passing rate, and our mastery rate is really very similar to the Nassau County. Last but not least is Algebra 2 Common Core. Here we maintained our high passing rate of 95%. Then we took a slight dip in our mastery rate. When we compare Plain Edge to Nassau County, we exceeded the county by 11% in our passing rate and are on par with their mastery rate.
As for U.S. history, this is a brand new exam that our students took this past year, which is why you will not see any comparative data. However, our passing rate was 9% and our mastery rate was 6%. And in comparison to the county, we were pretty much on par with our passing and mastery. For global history, you will see as well, from year to year, we did take a slight dip in passing and mastery for the year. And compared to the county, we were close to on par with passing. As for mastery, we are currently analyzing the data to take it.
So that brings us next to our science exams. So the first one that our students take is Earth Science Regions and middle school. Districts across Nassau County decide whether 8th grade stays living environment or Earth Science. So when we look at the data in Nassau County, it includes high school students across there. Like I said, districts choose either Earth Science or living environment. But as you can see, we increased our passing by 6% in here, and our mastery stayed pretty much on par from year to year. But when you look at the Nassau County data, we exceed the county county by 9%, and our mastery is on par with them throughout the county. When we look at our living environment regions, okay, we increased our passing by 2% and our mastery went up by 13%. So we are definitely on a good trend upward in the living environment. And then if you look at us compared to Nassau County, we have a 13% increase of, over them in both passing and mastery across the county. Now looking at the chemistry regions, we increased our passing by 11%. Our mastery dipped just a little, but stayed about the same from year to year. And then when you look at the county, we do notice that we are below the county in passing and mastery. We are starting to examine why that is the case, and then I will explain what we found out once I go through physics when we talk to Nassau BOCES. So with physics, we stayed on par pretty much from last year with our passing and mastery. However, we did notice we are below the county in this as well, and we just, we analyzed the data and we dived into each of the exams year to year, and we didn't understand why there's such a difference in these two exams. And when we called Nassau BOCES, they said that other districts choose who goes into chemistry and physics, where we have open enrollment. So if a child wants to pursue their love of science and wants to try a chemistry or physics, we allow them to try out chemistry and physics, where in other districts, they're not allowed to take it. So the data people at Nassau BOCES told us we have a very high number of students who we allow to take chemistry and physics through that process. So looking at all the regions' data, we had some ups and we had some dips and we had some stay the same, but we always are looking for instructional enhancements. We are constantly looking at the data. So the departments already, with the building administration as well as the curriculum associates, in their department meetings, in their PLCs, we've already dived into these regions, and we do an itemized analysis of all the different questions. And there's also a wrong answer report that's provided to us by Nassau BOCES and Instructional Data Warehouse, where we're able to see what wrong answers the student chose. So if all of the students chose the same wrong answer, well, why? Was the question worded tricky? Do we have to, show them how to dissect that question a little bit better? There's always a distractor. That when you have a multiple choice, you could always eliminate two, but you have those two that could be, and those are the questions that we ask ourselves when we're diving into the data. And how are we going to use that to drive and inform our instruction moving forward? Also talking about maybe one class did better on one question than the other, and then that has the conversation between the professionals of how did you approach it with your class. Maybe I need to reteach it and approach it that same way. So then you have those best instructional practices being talked about as well, and then making those curricular adjustments, in the scope and sequence and the content and how we're presenting it. We also spiral the different concepts throughout the school year. So there's constant reinforcement and practice of the different standards and skills of the content throughout the school year. So our students really master it by the end. We constantly have professional development on these region skills as they keep changing, like the science ones are changing. We had our curriculum associate as well as a leader from the science department to go in order to see how they're making changes on these tests in order to help our students. We also have created after-school regions prep sessions for January and June of 2024, and we continue to work on vertical alignment throughout the district pre-K through 12 to ensure that the skills and standards are all being addressed, taught, and mastered. Any questions?
Okay.
Ms. Barrett?
So, when you break down, obviously, I think everybody like to see the chemistry and the physics being at school.
Mm-hmm.
Do you bring in the instructors into the data? Do they see the data that is out there and see if they need to make a change in how they teach, or if there's something that they're missing or students are missing?
So yes, so that's what I was talking about in the PLCs that we have on Tuesdays in department meetings, as well as when they have common prep times, they're diving in. So the building administrators and the curriculum associates they set goals, They dove into these questions, and then we're starting that work now. So, and that's when I was saying that they dive into that wrong answer report and see what the kids chose. They just don't see that, oh, Ray got this question wrong. Why did Ray get that question wrong? What did he pick? And did all the other students who got that question wrong pick the same thing? And then those are those conversations that start to help us drive and inform our instruction.
Thank you.
Mrs. Townsend?
So then do you also assess whether or not, if there's a commonality of a question that most of the students got wrong, is that also compared on the bigger scope, that is the same question that everyone's getting wrong in all the other districts?
You'll find that. We definitely find that we're looking at our wrong answers, and we're seeing, they also give you a dip in the county. So you're above or below the county average for students for that question that got it right or wrong. So yes, that's actually in the report as well. So you can a lot of times see the bad questions sometimes, those trickier questions.
And right after the exam is released too, you know, we're all on listservs, and everyone talks about how this one question is a bad question and should have never, because, and then how they want the children to respond to it. But, you know, and that's where then we as educators like say, okay, this is something maybe we would have never had control of because of how they worded the question. But then we look at that. But also, if you also saw when our mastery did go down and we said we were on par with the county, that also shows there was something with that exam. Like, it just doesn't happen for everybody, you know, and there was nothing wrong with the exam.
And on the
So
flip,
because obviously, if there's areas that the instruction can improve, that's great, and we learn and derive that information. But obviously, if it's a bad question, it kind of goes back to like, I was talking about one point. If the question itself is bad, then I don't really think we should subject our teachers to learning different methods to drive instruction for bad questions.
Right. But if, for instance, you know, I'm a teacher and Kathy's a teacher, and all of my kids got it right, 90% of mine got it right, and let's say 40% of hers got it wrong, she may say, like, that's where that conversation is. You didn't do that. I figured I could pick on you. I wasn't going to pick on them. So, if it's... All right, I was the one who got the 40% wrong. Either way, we would collaborate and say, how did you teach it? Because everyone has their own style, and kids connect differently. So maybe the way I'm saying it, or the way we're, you know, working on it together in class is different than next door. And that's why we always try to do the intervisitations as well, because teaching has used to be with the four walls. You didn't know what was going on in the classroom next to you. So our PLCs, our department meetings, allow for that collaboration and that talk, but we also allow teachers to do those intervisitations to say, you know what, I really want to see how you taught that, you know, and let me see how I can teach it differently.
and on the flip side of that too is all of those questions are tied to standards. So we can look back and see which standards are we struggling through, and what other things can we find to address those standards. And there are always new ways and new ideas that are coming out, and they're on listservs, and we talk with, you know, teachers in other districts too. So let's say a district did outperform us on that question. We can find out how are they addressing those things so that kids really understand that.
Right. I like the fact that it's more of a positive collaboration, not competitive. So, any negative.
No, I mean, all of our professionals here want to do what's best for students, and, you know, that's our ultimate goal, and we always want to get better. You know, we never want to stay stagnant. The world changes, education changes. I mean, the way we all went to school has changed, you know, from how students go to school now, and well, with everything that's accessible to them. You know, I was just even saying the other day, when I was reading, and I would be able to go look up a definition because I had a Kindle, it would have been a lot easier. So there are things that we are constantly evolving. It's a lot easier than looking it up in the website.
I think also, you know, statistically, what was presented is also very close. So, from a statistician point of view, when something is not 15% away from you. You have ways to use those RAP reports and choose the questions and say, you know, what was question one? Like example, on the 4th grade ELA, the first question was always about main idea. And a lot of teachers noticed, oh, they're getting that question one wrong. I wonder why. We must not be focusing on main idea. The following year, they did amazing on the main idea question because we put a heavy emphasis in that. That's the same thing for like a figurative language question or a poetry question. But I think with these statistics that you're presenting now, it shows that we're doing really exceptionally well. I mean, 98%, 93% is very, very close. If it was a wider margin, I would say that you would have to kind of worry. But now you actually have information that will support the strategies used for teaching and learning. Chemistry and physics are very, very hard. You know, you could add to the presentation maybe a question that we would have to do every night.
It was definitely nice to hear that, well, one, that we can go to BOCES and they could help us also dive deeper into the data and to understand that, you know, and we want the kids to take as many opportunities, you know, that's available to them. And if they don't do as well, we could always work on getting them to a, you know, a better point. So.
You know, and I think in the past, you know, and not here, just generally, like generally in New York State, females were kind of shied away from math and science, and now you have multiple students wanting to take math and science, so I think we really need to promote that. And, you know, again, with the framework of what you're going to present to the students, they'll be excited to take chemistry and physics because they might use that in the future.
Like,
you never know.
Like last year, a student who was ICT wanted, a few students who were in the inclusion classes wanted to try chemistry. And we had an inclusion section, whereas most districts will not have an inclusion section for chemistry because it's not required on their IEP for that. So to us, you know, yes, our numbers are lower, but we're providing those opportunities for students to have possible success and to further their educational journey.
Right, and then lastly, I just have to say, what I'm most proud of Plainridge is that there are more than 4. So even though I am very happy that we score very highly and that we've done well compared to the average, I still pride on ourselves that our teaching staff understands that we're not teaching to score. For teaching to develop students to their highest potential.
Thank you.
Actually, I had a question that kind of related to the point you mentioned before. For the students that struggle with chemistry and physics and this focus on mental health, the ones that are maybe scoring lower than their peers, because obviously kids talk and try to figure out where they fall, are you seeing any negative impacts from maybe students taking classes that may be difficult for them to comprehend and then having an impact on their mental health or distressed in any way?
Not that it has come to our attention. And also, you know, we're not forcing them to take that class. It is them choosing to take that class. And we have the supports here that are, you know, between the extra help and the honor societies that help out as well. And, you know, now we're able to put in those after school sessions closer to the regions. Not to my knowledge.
I should also explain that we do cross-build schedules, so that in the event there is a class that someone is struggling with heavily, that there is a different class that they can take. It's something that comes to us. But our guidance department works with the students and the administration to make that determination. You are all the students, we say this. But there are times when, for whatever reasons, at this point in time, I'm not going to be able to complete this. And there are cutoffs, obviously, but the teachers are really the judge at the end. They're the ones that really help the students be most successful. In rare instances where that happens, there are the abilities to migrate to a different class that's during the same period. So that's really left up to guidance and the principal. The crossover classes need to be there so that there is this relief valve in case there is something that, you know, needs to change.
That's good.
But obviously there are also requirements reading diploma that you have to take, so everyone has to take this.
And I would
Some of
say,
these more advanced classes are obviously elective.
and I would say the reverse is true. Our highest achieving kids are the ones that are most stressed because they're pushing themselves. So it's actually the reverse of what you're saying.
Oh, no, what I was trying to get to was more, let's say they're struggling in the earlier science classes, like earth science and living environment, I guess they call it now. You know, and they decide they want to take chemistry and physics, and they haven't shown like that high aptitude towards the sciences. You know, maybe the last thing you want is a child to continue and feel, feel that distress continue. So that's was more in line for those types of students, not the high achieving, works well under pressure type. But it's good to hear that there's support with other classes in case they need that out.
Again, always a discussion between guidance, parents, and what class you're going to take. So I think kind of gearing the conversation, I think our professionals working in our guidance staff, it's second to none with helping our students and parents understand what classes might be within their wheelhouse, and they want to get challenged. It's the opportunity to have that. So I think there's definitely a conversation that needs to happen in guidance and this.
There are recommendations, obviously, for class selection on an annual basis. There are recommendations from the teachers to the guidance counselors that they share with their students and their family for appropriate level courses. But since we have open enrollment, which allows anyone to take any class that they choose, they can choose to not take the recommendation at this time and choose to do a higher level course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
much. Continue the coronavirus response and relief supplemental.
You know what, I'm going to switch the order up.
Switch it up?
Oh,
This one's more related, so I'm going to take the old business one if I could, please, at this point in time, since it's related to the regions, if that's okay with the board, so we can stay on the topic of the regions.
Right, one of the reasons on it, that's,
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Selena will present only helps regions grading procedures.
We had a request last month to take a look at the impact of regions grades on students' GPAs during the 22-23 school year. I'm going to kind of walk you through this a little bit. And there was a request to consider what the potential positive impact a regions only helps procedure might be for supporting all planning students. So let's talk a little bit about that tonight. The first Regents exams, a little history lesson there in June 1878, and there's only about 100 schools that actually gave them. The next year, 1879, there was 25, and everybody had to give them. I don't know how they did that, to be honest with you. How did they design these tests only in 1 year? It takes many years to design a good examination. And another important point is that the New York State Education Department does not recommend including Regents exam grades in calculating grade point averages. It's used traditionally inside of schools, perhaps for motivation, to be sure that everybody understands that there is some significance to this examination and evaluation. I have a couple of different thoughts about that, which I'll talk about. For the Regents overview, we had 1,861. This is related to the previous presentation that we just watched, where you saw there were the same number of students mentioned, grades 8 through 12. 837 of them, they completed at least one Regents exam. 46% of them had their GPA negatively impacted by the Regents score. 54% had no impact, or they benefited from it. And on average, there was a 1-point differential in a student's grade point average when incorporating the Regents score, for 46% of those that were negatively impacted. So they were on target. You know, our expectation is that the Regents examination is something that you should perform well on. I may not philosophically agree with the Regents in the sense that obviously I'm bound with my certification to enforce the learning standards. But this evaluation is an evaluation that I believe belongs in the teacher's hands, and perhaps not NCS Pearson, and we can go on with philosophical discussions about this. But the reality is that the teachers know what they're testing the students on, as opposed to a state standardized exam, which is used as a program evaluation. It is also used in order to check for alignment between the learning standards and what's actually being asked. So I think that there is some value inside of it. If we dive a little deeper, there are 1,861. There was 1,068 Regents exams that negatively impacted. 701 of these grades was 1 point or less. 340 was 1 to 3 points. 24 of these grades, 3 to 5. And 3 of the grades were 5 points or more. So as you can see, there was considerable impact here for the Regents examination. So, I begin to question why, but I'm not the only person questioning why. The reading examination, along with the entire testing value that which I consider to be a huge moneymaker for the state at this point in time, and is also a way for them to perform evaluation. Reading examinations are not given in all schools across the country. Depending on where you go to school, there's different ways of evaluating. I am pro-teacher in the sense that I would like our teachers to manufacture and create the examinations based upon the topics that are defined by the New York State Learning Standards. So when we take a look at these things, I do believe you're going to see a large change in reading examinations over the next 3 to 5 years, that the state is going to take a different position. But I can't speak for the state, so I won't, but there's a lot of people out there that are basically saying they're trying to figure out how to measure what students learn. I'm all for accountability. I have no problem with what our teachers do on a daily basis, but I believe that when this examination comes, which is created by outside groups, that it may not reflect what has been taught to the students. So there is this possibility that there is a negative impact to our students. And why would I want our students to be negatively impacted? That's my first question as your superintendent. So as I thought about this and I spoke about it with administration, I think that we should give every child in this district the opportunity for the Regents to help. If the Board of Regents recommends that it not be included inside the grade point average, I don't believe it should be included inside the grade point average. But let's talk a little bit more, let's go a little bit deeper. So it would be 10% of a course grade if and only if the exam grade will have a positive effect on the student's final grade. So there's the only help part. So if you perform and achieve 100, so most of the time, the performance for the 4 quarters is equivalent to your performance on your Regents examination, if it's a fair evaluation of what you've been taught for. But we do use our Regents exam scores as much as 10% at this point in time. But I would only recommend that we consider the 10% if it benefited the students, right? If it was a negatively impacted grade point average. There's a lot of competition out there, right? And I want our kids here to have a leg up on every single possibility that they could have. If they decide to apply to a university, or to go to the military, or to go anywhere that requires some type of exit outcome, and their grade point average has some type of influence over that, I want to be sure that those kids are going where they need to go and are going to not be negatively impacted. And someone else gets that spot. I want our kids to get that spot, right? So, as we take a look at this, they will always be on the transcript. So they're not going anywhere. So the reading score will always be there. You have, as the board, the ability to authorize me to follow through and say, okay, we're going to use it in order to improve your grade point average if it is something that is positive. It will be on there. Some people say it's like, well, the kids won't work very hard for the reading. Sure they will, because the places that they're looking to go, our kids are high achievers. They want to go to the best schools possible, right? So that score is going to be on there. You can't get 95s across the board for 4 quarters and then get a 50 on the Regents and think that the university is going to look at that and say, well, this person did the right thing. This person, performed well on their final exit outcome. It's not going to work. They need to sit in order to be eligible for the Regents Only Helps accommodation. If they're absent, they have to take it anyway in order to meet the graduation requirements. So if someone's out, they're going to have to take the exam regardless. So you can't miss the examination because you decide you don't want your reading score because, quote, the school's not counting it in your average. I do believe that the kids will continue to perform similarly or extremely well on the New York State Regents exams, implementing it as long as they're in existence, for sure. This procedure allows us to take local control over practice that we can use to reward the students for the day-to-day work they do inside of our classrooms with our teachers. Right? I value the importance of the Regents exam to a degree, and they play an overall assessment tool of student performance, but it's more of a program evaluation for me as your superintendent. When I take a look at what we're doing inside the classrooms, I need to know the whys. I'd like to know why, right? Why in chemistry and physics? What happened? Was it something that we were involved with? Is it something that we didn't deliver? Is it something that, how can we do better, right? But then we go back to here is that I really trust the teachers most, right? The learning standards are in place and they're basically the umbrella. And everything that fits in underneath it is what we teach on a daily basis. And it needs to include those topics, right? But they're far better in assessing achievement, I believe, than any Regents exam will ever be. We did use this Regents Only Helps. There weren't many Regents given in 2020. 21, that was COVID. 21, 22, we did use it. Last year, we did not use it. So there's been 3 years of this, getting this additional help. My recommendation is that the board discuss and talk about this topic, and then ultimately authorize me as my recommendation, obviously as a procedure, in order to do this. I'd have to go back and do a recalculation on all the grades from last year, which we did the year before, so it's something that we can definitely do. We see the negative impact that that had to students' grade point averages if you go back to the beginning of this presentation. And this was for when we started off. So there are students' grade point averages that were negatively impacted by these reason scores. And I'm an advocate for giving the kids the opportunity in order to take advantage of using these when it does help them. But they have 4 quarters that basically is demonstrating their proficiency and their performance level, and that it was negative and that it hurts you in the long run for possibilities in the future, I don't believe is something that we should support. And that's something that I would advocate for. So, in summary, what I would suggest is the board to discuss and ultimately reflect upon and give thought to with me tonight about the Regents examination, the value of the Regents examination, and putting in place the Regents only helps grading procedure so that we can help our students get into the best possible programs in the future that they would like. When I look at the Regents sometimes and I see the performance on the Regents, right, and then I use this, even though the New York State Board of Regents says, we don't recommend that you use this, right? Why am I using it? So this is, you know, as your superintendent of schools, the leader, for lack of a better term, in the educational programs, it's something for us to discuss tonight. We need to talk about it. So I put that on the table for discussion, and I'm open to any type of conversation that people would like to have. So I thank you for letting me shifting it around, but it was related to the previous presentation, so while it was fresh, Regents performance, I think it was appropriate.
Can I ask some questions just to further my understanding? Sure. In terms of the New York State Education Department saying not to use it for GPA calculation, has it always been like that, or is that like a newer concept?
It's always been written since I've known about it for many, many years. Okay. And there are a few districts on Long Island that are participating without, you know, that are not counting that inside of their grade point average. And you know, when I talk about that, you know, it goes back to the things that we spoke about here. You know, how could a student perform for 4 consecutive quarters? And in the end, with an evaluation that wasn't designed by our teachers to test concepts that may or may not have been included inside the curriculum, right? It's going to negatively impact potentially their future. So that's kind of like where this, you know, came up, and I felt pretty passionate about it. I was not aware that people were doing this, but I've learned other districts have been giving their students this benefit, and I believe Plain Edge graduates should also have that benefit. That's my professional opinion.
The other question I had is, I saw the weighting is 10%. Is that how it's always been, or is that like a reduction? Because I always understood it as 20. I think the middle school might be different.
We had a wide array here at one point in time.
Oh, really?
It went anywhere from 10 up through 20, 25. In that area, 10 or 20. Okay. But the idea behind it, though, is that we've normalized that. It's 10% across the board.
Okay, so it's been like that for a while.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. That's because I couldn't explain why in one and not the other. Mm-hmm. It didn't seem, it wasn't something I was willing to take on. And I thought it was, I didn't, like I said before, it's one day in your life. You know what I mean? And I believe that it's important, but how about if I got up that day and I'm not feeling well? Or how about I didn't understand what the question said, et cetera? So that should define me for the rest of my life? I don't think so. That's me.
Yeah, no, I get it. I would agree with that. The last question I have is, with design of the exam, like would the district still, well, no, you would just do the Regents, right? You're talking if they do away with the Regents.
Well, then that's a whole nother discussion.
That's a different.
You know, the idea behind that, you know, it's, I think we're probably 3 to 5 years out on that if I had to guess, but I do believe it'll become a thing of the past at some point. But I don't work for the Board of Regents, and I can't tell you, but I see what people are talking about here today, you know, with SATs and ACTs and universities counting them and not counting them. And here we have a state evaluation where nobody else has the same state evaluation. There are states that have state evaluations, But the Regents itself, I think it seems to be a dinosaur of the past. Our teachers can create better tests.
So, I've always talked about the whole test on different levels. Not that I don't think that testing doesn't matter at all, but even with the Regents, because yes, I'm aging myself and I'm a dinosaur, but way back when I went to high school, you get a general diploma and you also had the option of getting a Regents diploma. So of course, the students, including myself, who did go the route to get both diplomas, were just trying to go the academic route because they were going to continue college. It didn't make the people who only took one diploma any less of a student, other than their route or their pathway was different from choosing to have both diplomas. And I think that's one of the things that was startling when I first looked at our education system and how it evolved, because it was only geared for testing, constant testing, to the point where you almost removed the value of education. And that was one of the things that I felt we were so proud of with Plainage, because we were trying to have programs created for students to think outside of the box, not to just be test takers, so that they could be the innovators, inventors, like the creators, like that's going into the future. And that's what we've done, because all the programs we've been creating, but from elementary to middle school to high school, there's so many things exciting, because I think that we're the ones who are doing something so different on Long Island. The thing that is a little disconcerting is what we were talking about. When you have districts who are doing different things. Now, COVID definitely brought it to light, because all of a sudden, these colleges who now can't, because a lot of students weren't able to take the SAT or the ACT, they had to figure out different measures to accept students. And they had to come up with creative ways, because they didn't know, what am I going to do? Because now, half the student body weren't even able to take one test because of COVID shutdowns. Or you had to travel, 100 miles to get your kid to take a test. So I do applaud this, because I feel like it's been a long time coming, and I could been at the Plainage building a long time. But I'm so excited about the focus going back to teaching, to trusting our educators, creating more guidelines maybe to help that educational environment be creative and innovative, but instead of constantly thinking about a score. Yes, I know there's some validity, but the honest truth is, the students that are going to score high, the students who are going to be academically high, they just will. Like when people say, are we lowering standards and they're not going to do well? No, the ones who are going to test high, they're going to take every opportunity to take the college level classes, the AP classes. It's almost foolhardy to entertain the fact that we're encouraging students or dumbing down the system. No, we're creating great, exciting ways for the new modern age to get them to say, you want to create different programs, and they can do little robots, like we do so much. Yeah, I'm fascinated. I'm just so excited about the things we do. And these are things that we've talked about for so many years. And I'm just excited that we're finally getting there, because it's ridiculous.
As you know, we were talking earlier about all the college credits that students graduate with. I tell people all the time, I run into families. I ran into a family that had 2 students that graduated with nearly 40 credits. College credits, you're talking about 2-year equivalency when they graduate. And they wanted to do their masters, and we're done in 3 years.
And that's
But that's not the norm.
Right,
But there are a lot of kids that get out of here 15 to 25 credits that are already under their belt. It's huge. It's a financial help for families to offer these accelerated courses. But I think that there's a lot of challenging conversations that are going to be ahead for schools at this point in time, because schools are really trying to figure out where they're going and how they're gonna reinvent themselves, especially at the secondary level.
I think I can talk, sorry.
Oh, sorry, but we talked about the fact that not every child, look, I am very proud of our statistics, but not every child is meant to go to college. They can go to the military, they can go into the trades. I mean, I just want our kids to be successful. I want them to go out there to be successful where they are mentally, emotionally, physically able to go out there and conquer the world and be, great citizens of our country and part of the world and help us be better people. So anyhow, I think we are doing that. We have created so many things. I'm excited that we're here. This presentation tonight, I'm so glad I'm here.
I'm just kind of going to account of what kids continue to do well and want to do well. I work in a district where this has been in play for a while, and we've seen no dip in student achievement, wanting to do well on the test. So I think it's been extremely beneficial for the teachers. Teachers are getting to know the kids at a different level. They're not having conversation. Oh, what bad question did you get wrong on a test? They're talking about how can we instill these creative minds and these outstanding thinkers out there, which I think, like I said, I understand we need to have reading exams for graduation requirements. I get it, but if there's a way we can kind of, and again, if New York State Education Department is saying, and again, they're not really percentage, they're based upon SNEL scores or standard scores. It's not
That's
meant.
the whole conversation.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. But what I'm talking about is that a lot of districts are using it as percentage for GPAs. I think it's just another way that we can kind of, again, fill those relationships, teachers and students. And I think Plain Edge has the best teachers out there. Bar none, I think it's amazing the work that you do every single day. I see the effort you put into it, so I'm all for I kind of brought this to attention last meeting. I wholeheartedly in agreement with this. Only helps, because again, it only kind of help our students achieve at a higher level.
All right, so I think we've come to some kind of consensus now to move forward with this recommendation from Dr. Selena. Yes?
Yes.
Everyone will just, we're not voting, but we can just at least put up our hands so we know.
Yeah, no change.
So it's not a change in any policy.
So I will work with the data department and Dr. Levine and CNI and high school guidance and middle school guidance. We'll do a review of scores from the previous year. We will run a recalculation and we will have that in place. We will continue to study this in the coming years to see what it is. If there's any type of impact or something that we need to talk further about, specifically grade point averages and the use of the reading examinations, I will bring it back to the Board of Education for further discussion. But I think I'm very happy with this. I think it's something that's good for kids. And the reality is, I think kids always want to do well. There's just no two ways about it. And I think that this kind of changes and shifts the game. I'll take care of this. Thank you.
Yeah, and one thing I want to point out too is that, test taking is a very emotional, physical, mental process, as Mr. Beirut was saying before that. When you go to take a test in the morning, at 8 o'clock in the morning, take a Regents exam, you could be fully prepared, but it is very draining on you. But of course, like Dr. Neto said, you want to do well. And so, again, if you say to kids, oh, anybody want to fail the test? Of course not. Everybody wants to get 100, but you're happy that you did the best that you could do, and allowing the students the opportunities to do the best that they can do on these exams, which are only given in New York State. It's something to be said. Colleges throughout the country may not even be looking at that little tiny bottom print that says Regents exams. They may not even be looking at that. But if the kid has that little leg up, it might be helpful to them in the future. So it's something to keep in mind. All right, now we're going to move on to coronavirus response and relief, supplemental appropriations and American Rescue Plan grants update with Dr. DiPaiolo.
Hi. Again. So today I'm going to provide the board with an update of our usage of our grants that we received due to COVID. So there's a few different ones. Some of this information will be stuff that you've already seen because we're just updating you on how the funds were allocated and spent. So if you look at this beginning in 21-22 school year, we received additional funding for pre-kindergarten, so we were able to expand our classes from 4 to 6, and now for this year we were able to go up to 8, and you'll see in the next slide that the additional funding was provided for us in order to do that. But again, this is in 21-22. The next is the CRISA grants. There's a lot of acronyms for these. So CRISA was broken down into ESSER and GEAR. So we received $2,695,788 for that. Then we have the American Rescue Plan, which was a little over $1.2 million. And then you could see that our total funding when the 21-22 school year was $4,528,113. But now, going into this year, the remaining funds for the 23-24 school year, as you could see what I talked about before, the pre-kindergarten grant went up. So that's what allowed us to have the 8 sections, which we were able to open up 2 additional classrooms in the morning. So all children who wanted to be in our program were able to get a spot in it. So that was great news that we were able to provide that to the community. The American Rescue Plan, this is not an additional $1.2 million. So this was we've already spent some of it, which we'll go into, but this is still remaining for the school year. So as you can see, the CRISA was removed from that because those were all approved and finalized. So those grants are completed. The ARP is approved and is still continuing and will end this year, and our pre-K grant was approved. And these allocations are not part of our general fund. The State Department recommends that we use these funds for non-recurring expenditures and that we talk about it publicly. So we have done this at different board meetings, as well as we always include different stakeholders in the conversations. We're constantly analyzing our data. As you can see, just the 1 point of regions that we analyze all data points from pre-K through 12, and we make adjustments of what we need to address the learning needs of our students. So looking at ESSER, excuse me, it was to address student learning needs. We spent the money with summer enrichment programs, summer remedial, after school support. We had the high school HVAC system upgrades, the East Plain air conditioning. We bridged the learning gaps in all the different subjects from pre-K through 12. We had different committees working on new phonics programs, social studies, character education. We had interdisciplinary work, advisory, teaming, new resources for our phonics program. We also spent funds, we were able to reimburse the district for extraordinary expenses to incur the reopening of school safety. So that dealt with a lot of, now we're dating back, remember, COVID seems so long ago, but we needed to purchase desk shields, flexible furniture to have that social distancing while we were able to still maintain the 21st century learning environment for all grade levels. We originally had to put elementary students in individual desks, so we had to buy all those. Cleaning and sanitizing, security, tent rentals, so we were able to provide our students with all their end of year events that other districts were not able to do, so we used our funding in order to do that. We had to provide more Chromebooks and iPads, and then we have our new book vending machines. With GEAR, we had, it was just student learning needs and reimbursing the district again for extraordinary expenses. So we had to provide extra nurses, a social worker. We had remote teachers at that time. We had enrichment and AIS supplies that we needed and different social and emotional workshops throughout. ARP funds, this is the grant that's still in progress. And again, like I said, we're constantly reevaluating and what our students need. So some of the expenditures will be on Chromebooks and iPads. We have the remedial programs for the middle school and elementary. We have those research review classes that we spoke about. We are able to offer our students pre-SAT, SAT and ACT prep courses. We have educational software, the advisory program and interdisciplinary teaming, pre-K workshops and supplies, flexible seating for cafeteria and classrooms, and other social emotional PBIS. Any questions from you?
Thank you so much.
It says not to use the funds for reoccurring pre-K. Will that funding end?
So pre-K is a little bit different. So that's, it could. The state reevaluates, originally we never got pre-K funding. So there have been districts receiving funding for pre-K for years before COVID. I think, they ask us to supply numbers. Peter, myself, and Teresa work together on these reports for the state. They ask if we have to incur any additional expenditures. They ask how much we need. So I think that's why the numbers have even changed from the previous year. It seems they don't want kids to have, school districts to have a wait list, because that was an additional question this year on the reports that we had to fill out. So with pre-K, that's a little different because it could end, but it doesn't seem like it.
It's a different, I just want to speak on it. It's a different line entry on the actual state budget that they put up on a regular basis. I don't believe politically that she's going to move away from it at this point in time. That's the governor and the New York State Education Fund that are working together. And there is a dependence that's been built up on it. But to the board's credit, the expansion of the program, not everybody expanded like we did. They basically kept it where it was, year one, because it is a lot of work. In order to expand these programs, you need space, you need supplies, and you need teachers, all of the above. But I think that the money should remain the same. My hope and expectation is that the governor will continue to support it. She really seems to be pro pre-K programs. I think the kids belong in school too. We were happy to be able to take everybody that was interested.
It was
two components, that there's a federal and a state money, so, two different entities.
And also, it was more for the districts who were hiring additional teachers that wouldn't be able to support it afterwards, and then they would have to let them go. So, it's really dependent on how the districts were using the money.
Your reimbursement rate per student is what, $5,400?
That's for pre-K.
Yeah, for pre-K.
You're only reimbursed for how many students you have. So that number on there, you might not be able to spend that because we didn't max out on the number of students.
Thank you.
And I just want to state that we jumped on pre-K the minute, I know you applied year after year, and we didn't, we weren't able to get pre-K, and we finally did, and we jumped on it. Where there are districts on Long Island who only started pre-K this year.
There are districts who are actually turning the money away because they cannot do the program. At our last assistant superintendent's meeting, they said we just didn't take the money. We just can't do it.
Yeah, you don't have to take the money if you know it's allocated. You have to use the money to get them.
So,
And
I'm
we'd
very
asked for a
proud.
number of years to get pre-K money. Levittown had it. You know what I mean? So I was like, why can't we have it? That was a discussion I had with this board. I was like, I just felt like, I don't understand why. It's something we should be offering.
That was a grant from years ago.
I know.
They cut it off.
And anyway, I had it stayed in effect. Questions?
With respect to funding, the controller came out that there's probably expectation of some large deficits in the budget going forward, just the state budget. And I think over the next 3 years, they said something to the effect of 36 billion, like 9 billion, 13 and 13. Do we have a view as to whether that's going to impact school aid or?
We probably won't, we never know that until.
We just basically.
I don't know if history is any indicator
There is no
of.
history, they've not cut.
I mean, there is the history of them constantly repeating that over and over, that there will be those deficits, and then we never really know until, let's say, the governor presents her budget, or however that pans out at the end, but.
They haven't specifically addressed school. That's the answer.
What was it, 2008, in the middle of the year they cut?
Yeah.
They cut the state aid?
2008 they cut
That's
us.
true. I
Right
mean,
in the middle of the year.
They can decide if there's a budget deficit, they can reallocate their original allocations. But what I tell people is, we pay a lot of taxes to live here in the state. We need to continue to be positive. We need to continue to support the programs, and we'll take it one day at a time. But to date, like I said before, I have seen it cut once before. I don't think that it's gonna be a pattern. I do also believe that the comptroller obviously is, he's the watchdog, and that's what he does. And he's gonna tell you what he thinks. Doesn't mean it's gonna happen. But we'll hope for the best.
and I think we did hear today a few things from the state that were being monitored now that were not monitored in the past, which I thought were very interesting in terms of, what school districts need and how they're looking at certain budget lines to make sure that things are being run exactly efficiently at the state level too. So that's an interesting thing.
One other question I had is, I had just noticed now in the presentation, the 800 desks, I guess, for the elementary schools. I'm assuming those were like the individual old school desks, like?
No.
Oh, they weren't?
They actually were a combination of various shaped desks that allowed students to cluster back together after the COVID rules were in effect.
Okay, so they could be reused?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
yeah, those definitely are.
Okay, that's
Well,
great.
the board had previously, in combination with that, had purchased new furniture for elementary schools, these supplement.
Okay.
Any other? Thank you so much. Business, do I have a motion to accept the business items number 1 through 34? Mrs. Maggio, second. Dr. Neto, all in favor?
No?
Oh,
Please
yeah.
hold.
Oh, please hold.
Madam Chairperson, at this time, I'd like to introduce item number 35 under new business, volunteer firefighters and volunteer ambulance workers tax exemption. Whereas the real property tax law 466 was enacted to provide eligible volunteer firefighters and volunteer ambulance workers with a real property tax exemption. The school tax on real property owned by the eligible firefighter or volunteer ambulance worker, so long as the district in which the real property is located after public hearing adopts a resolution authorizing the exemption amount requirements of the New York State Real Property Tax 466A, and whereas the Real Property Tax Law Section 466A provides for the additional benefits conferred by the statute applicable to the exemption of the school taxes, so long as the school district, which has authorized the exemption under 466A, adopts a resolution authorizing such additional benefits. Now therefore, it be resolved that the Planners Board of Education hereby authorizes the application of the volunteer firefighter and ambulance worker real property tax exemption as contained in the RPTL Section 466A in the amount of 10% of assessed value, and be it further resolved that pursuant to RPTL, the Board of Education establishes a minimum requirement of each applicant to be 2 years. Be it further resolved that pursuant to the RPTL 466A, the Board of Ed designates that application for exemption must be made to the local agency responsible for assessment of real property tax. Lifetime exemption, be it further resolved that the plaintiff does hereby grant an otherwise eligible volunteer firefighter or volunteer ambulance worker the exemption provided for in this resolution for the remainder of his or her life if the eligible volunteer or volunteer ambulance worker accrues more than 20 years of active service to the community and is so certified by the authority having jurisdiction for the incorporated volunteer fire department, fire company, fire department, or volunteer ambulance. Unremarried spouse or killed in line of duty. Be it further resolved that the Planned School District does hereby grant an exemption claim pursuant to RPTL 466A to a deceased enrolled member's unremarried spouse if such member is killed in the line of duty, subject to the requirements set forth in RPTL 466A. The unremarried spouse of deceased, be it further resolved that the Planned School District does hereby grant an exemption claim form the RPTL 466A to a deceased enrolled member's unremarried spouse, subject to the requirements set forth in RPTL 466-A. And I would ask at this point in time, as amended, items number 1 through 35, the board consider these. Okay, first.
Make a motion. Mrs. Maggio, do I have a second? Dr. Neto, all in favor?
Mr. Bayroudi, Mrs. Townsend, Dr. Neto, Dr. Nadian, Mr. Paris, Mrs. Maggio. Opposed? No one opposed?
Abstaining.
No one abstaining.
Passes.
Thank you. And the motion has passed. You got that? Yeah, good. Okay. Now we're up to, got it?
Yep, we're good.
All right.
Keep moving.
Pride and Plain Edge, opportunity for board members to present on attendance, participation at school and/or community events. Mr. Beirut?
Sure. So I had the pleasure of attending a National Honor Society event for music, art, English, science, and math. It was something I don't recall happening when I was in Plain Edge, but it was nice to see that they are recognizing students in specific subject areas. You know, back then I just remember just the National Honor Society, and I think this is a great thing that we have, and it was great to see you know, the recognition being bestowed on these kids. I especially like the pledges. Some of them were pretty funny, especially honoring the pledge for math for all the digits of pi, which, you know, if you like math, it's a good corny joke, but I appreciated it. The other thing is I went to the football varsity game against Beth Page, and that was a great game. Rainy, of course, like most of the games have been this year, but still a great victory there. I attended a JV volleyball game against Cary. It was dig pink, so also there was a breast cancer awareness component to that, and I thought, you know, that was great that the girls of this district, you know, were part of something and raising awareness for that. And then lastly, this past weekend for the Bobcats was the first weekend where a lot of the girls were cheerleading, so competition season started for that. And it was great to attend those as well. All the women in the Beiruti household are involved in one way or another, whether it's the wife coaching down to the littlest one competing, and then obviously there was football as well with the Bobcats. And so it was a pretty busy time period since the last Board of Ed meeting.
Thank you, Brian. Anyone else? Thank you. Informational reports. Do I have any questions on the informational reports? Okay. Opportunity for public comment. All comments are directed to the Board of Education President. Each speaker is limited to 2 minutes in total. Each speaker is expected to use the microphone and clearly state their name. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Perry Hughes, President, Financial Relations and Teachers. Nice to see everyone tonight. I did want to talk a little bit about the Wizards, but first I want to talk about the pre-K discussion that you were having, because I live in a district right nearby. I won't say which one, but let's just say it's really, really close. And I have neighbors who are very upset that they have to pay thousands and thousands of dollars a year on top of their already ridiculously high taxes to send their kids to pre-K. And it's simply because the district is unwilling to put forth the effort necessary to run the pre-K programs. So I applaud Dr. Sling, the Board of Ed, the previous boards of Ed, for always looking to do the right thing for not just teachers, students, but the community as a whole. And I'm sure that this community is very thankful to all the efforts that you put in to make the pre-K program happen. It doesn't happen across Long Island. It is really only because of the hard work of the people sitting in front of us here. So thank you. Very exciting news. I know that I've said this before. The Wizards are coming. It's almost sold out. There's only 100 tickets left. We do, of course, open an invitation. I know Mr. Paris has responded as our honorary coach. It's going to be Wednesday, November 8th. I think that's right. Yes, Wednesday, November 8th.
Angio also responded.
Oh, she did. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I might not have seen the response.
You got the evil eye. She said, "You want to take care of this, Ed, right?" I said, "Yes, I will."
So, just so you know, there's no time limit. If you want to come last minute, anyone from the board or the superintendent and his team are welcome to attend, to play. It's a great night. We raise thousands of dollars for both the PTA and the PFT Scholarship Fund. And just remember, that's money that goes directly back to the community in the form of college scholarships. We are also this year partnering with Vinnie's Army to do a 50-50 raffle at the event that's going to raise money for childhood cancer research. So it's going to be a fantastic night. PFT is always very proud to be a sponsor here, and we hope to see you all there. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Dr. Neto, do you want a second? Mr. Paris, all in favor?
Mr. Bayrudi, Mrs. Townsend, Dr. Neto, Dr. Davy, Mr. Harris, Mr. Davila.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great.
Safe home, everyone.
Excuse me.